ABC Women would like to thank BIPOC Executive Search for sponsoring today's episode.
The BIPOC Executive Search app is here for you. Get information about job opportunities we're recruiting for. Keep up to date and in the know about career news tailored to Indigenous, Black, and other racialized audiences. Gain helpful tips and learnings to help you on your career trajectory, celebrate job appointments, and more. The BIPOC Executive Search app, here to elevate the candidate experience for Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. Free to download and available on iPhone and Android smartphones.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 woman, growing strong. 100 woman, where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny, woman.
ABC Women would like to take this opportunity to welcome our viewers and listening audience, families, friends, and our sponsors to our inspirational conversations, fireside chats with 100 ABC Honourees. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold initiative created by the co-authors, the Honourable Dr. Jean Augustine, a former MP, Donna Jones-Simmons, a corporate diversity executive, and Dr. Denise O'Neill-Green, Vice President, Equity and Community Inclusion at Ryerson University. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as a website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. We are pleased to bring you a series of fireside chats which include conversations around education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, legal, technology, entrepreneurship, diversity and equity, media, engineering, politics, sports, and so much more. These, we know, are topics that matter to us and to you. These educational and inspirational conversations will be made available to all current and future generations via our 100 ABC YouTube channel. This is a great way to learn from our elders, brilliant-minded and accomplished Black Canadian women.
So join me in welcoming our panelists and moderator for today's session, Legal Speak. Our panelists are Cheryl Blondell-King, who was called to the bar in 1992 and has spent most of her career working as a Crown attorney. Cheryl has volunteered in a women's shelter, worked with youth at risk, and contributed to the Human Rights Commission board. She currently works with young women aged 16 to 22 years old, inspiring them for their bright future. Darlene Lozis is the founder of 3R International, an organization that supports, orients, and equips youth and their families to help them rebuild and develop their talents. For more than a decade, she has been hosting Bouillon Racine, a radio show on CHUO FM. is a national and international speaker, mediator, negotiator, and Juris Doctor. Karine Morin is a Justice of the Peace who presides in the Halton region. Prior to her appointment, she worked with abused women and children, youth at risk for social justice programs for French immigrants. Karine sits on the French Language Services Subcommittee for Provincial Offenses and provides diversity management training to law professionals and police officers. Our moderator is Thora Espinet, an attorney who has been practicing for 36 years. She's a former deputy judge of the Toronto Small Claims Court and former chair of the Canada Pension Plan Tribunal. Recently, the University of Windsor's Faculty of Law launched a scholarship for Black students in her name. Thora?
Thank you very much. Now we are going to have 3 people speak about their expertise in their particular area. I will first call on Cheryl Blondell, who is a Crown Attorney, as you've heard. So Cheryl, I understand that you have been in your legal career as a Crown Attorney for several years. Is there any reason why you chose that area of law instead of going in as a defense counsel or other areas?
Yes, my job as assistant Crown Attorney gives me an opportunity to make decisions that impact our community as well as the wider community. And I was attracted to it. That was one of the reasons I was attracted to it. I'm in a position because I'm still doing it, that allows me to make certain decisions, and decisions I make can be heard, and it impacts our community and affects our community. And it also gives me the opportunity to interact with all people from all walks of life in all areas of criminal law, as opposed to doing defense work where I will not be in such a strong position of when it comes to my practice.
Okay, that's very interesting. Is there any stage in your career, your long career as a Crown Attorney, that you would look back and say, this was not what I thought that law would be?
As a Crown, no, because I really enjoy what I do, and I still do, even having done it for so many years. I still find it interesting. I still come across fascinating people from all sectors of life. And no, I think there are other areas of law that I do have an interest in and wanted to do when I first started, but I am happy where I am and I enjoy what I do.
Okay, that's interesting. We just have limited time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move on to Darlene. Darlene, she runs an organization, very, very interesting work that she does in the Ottawa Gatineau area, dealing with young people in conflict with the legal system. In dealing with these young people, I am sure you have developed a lot of strategies, given that they're involved mostly, I'm assuming, with the criminal justice system. Have you developed any strategies that you think might work with other people doing this similar work across Canada? Oh, can you unmute, because
I just realized that. I'm sorry again. I have a lot of noise. My people, they are really moving around. Anyways, it's a really good question, Thora. First of all, I would really mention 4 seemingly very simple elements. The first one is to design programs and create initiatives based on the needs and demands of the people that we're supposed to serve, and not the contrary, because we see in a lot of organizations doing the contrary, and they're not really helping the people that we're supposed to serve. Secondly, it's to work to connect people to their inner selves, to their history, and of course, to their ancestors. Why I'm saying this is because we have a lot of identity crisis within our communities, and the youth are they're really trying to get connected to understand better who they are. So we need to do that work. Involve them as much as possible is also one thing we should do, and take mutual accountability approach. This is what we are doing anyways. It's to think that nothing without them and everything with them. So make sure that we have a conversation with the parents and the environment as well, because it's really what we are envisioning to do. It's really putting one people and make sure to reconstruct that individual by working with on the mind, the soul, the body, and the environment. So that person has to become oneself. And also not be to put aside any fear of making difficult choices. And I'm talking about funding. Most of the organizations are fighting to get funding from the government. You know, when you do that, you're losing a lot of time in doing administrative work instead of focusing on the work you're supposed to do to help. So those are things that I think it's really important. And lastly is to develop more partnership within our communities. The government thinks it's better putting all the effort on other organizations to give you a sense of pride and recognition. But I think the parents, and even the youth are the main people and the most interesting people to get the feedback and give you the feedback on how you're doing your work.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting, because we know that there's a lot of problems with a lot of young people here. There's a question that I need to ask about the criminal code. The criminal code has special provisions for Indigenous people in terms of sentencing. Do you think that that provision should be in the criminal code when it comes to Black people?
Absolutely. We have to remind that the provisions made in recognition of the historical disadvantage of Indigenous communities should be the same for racialized people. And why one of the reasons is because we are sharing stories, and I'm talking about daily stories, same for both of us, for the BIPOC. And it's also, we have also societal realities that are the same. And I'm talking about poverty, police brutality, discrimination, racism, racial profiling, and so forth, right? So because of that, and we also share actually similar history, as I said before, we need to get that same treatment. Because first of all, most of our community members don't really understand the system. It's a very, and I think Cheryl can also testify on that, it's really a difficult system to understand. And also if you came from a different country, you don't really know what's going on. And the language can be also a barrier. As our focus is on young people, we believe that these discrepancies should be also taken and reflected in the Child, Youth and Family Services Act, also the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and lastly, in the Child and Family Services Act. Why? Because, you know, there are some changes they made in some amendments on the Child, Youth and Family Services Act, but Black parents don't really feel they were included in the process, and they feel that their parental rights have been taken away from them, because you cannot really give all the liberty, and I'm talking about responsibilities, to the youth and not the parents. Spiritually and culturally, this is something that we don't believe in. So we need to get the collaborative and social approach. And it has to start with communities heavily affected by legal injustice. So we need to have that collaboration. We need to make sure that we participate more in the processes. in regards to any amendments the legislators might find appropriate to do.
Okay, this question is not on there, but I was just wondering, how do you think the impact of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of African Peoples, how would that have an impact on what you're doing now?
Well, I would really say that it was a good move. It's important to remind the society that we are living in what our ancestors, and we're still contributing to the society itself. But in regards to laws and another way of doing business, I believe there are a lot more to do. It's one step towards million steps that we have to be taken.
Okay, that was very, very interesting. Now I will just go on to Karine. Karine, last but not least, you have been Justice of the Peace, and you work in French and English, which is very interesting. And why did you decide to choose that as a career?
Well, during my 20+ year engagement in the community prior to my appointment, I developed and I implemented many social justice programs. My satisfaction has always been to see the positive impact on others. That was my motivation to become a Justice of the Peace.
Mm-hmm.
As I sit in bail courts and in the provincial offenses courts, this career change has given me the opportunity to showcase in a different way, though, not only my passion for justice, but also my ability to listen and to analyze, and more so to my ability to show empathy to others, to analyze the facts that are given before me before I make an objective judgment. Through my implication with the French Language Services Subcommittee, I am very pleased to be able to ensure that the Francophones can access justice in French in Ontario. The Francophone community, as you know, is mainly composed of immigrants from the 40+ French-speaking countries in Africa, and also the Caribbean, of course. Spending the majority of my time, though, in bail court, I can say that my days can be very, very intense. I make it a point to show empathy to each person that comes before me. Let it be a murderer, a drug dealer, or a thief, their family members, or people as well in the provincial court, or even the people that I work with. I can say that we all need to be giving the respect to be listened to, but also to be heard. So to show empathy for me is what inspires me and motivates me every day in my job.
Do you think that in your lived experiences, does it form a part of your thought processes and even the decisions that you make?
Oh, absolutely, Thora. That's a very good question. Every aspect of my life plays an important part in my thought process in court. One cannot separate from your own identity, but you can certainly set aside your biases when you make sound decisions. I grew up as a Black child, obviously in the 60s, in an all-white small city. I can say that I was raised as a child from immigrant parents. My lived experience as a young person, as a teenager, I say as a student in university, as a single mother, and as a professional facing daily racism at work. All of it is what makes me who I am today. And I continue to learn every day from the people that are before me in court, and all of that contributes to my thought process in my daily decisions.
I'm going to ask one more question, and any one of you can answer this. What advice would you give a young person who is trying to find their way in all the confusion that we have in society today?
I would say do research, try to talk to elders, to adults as much as you can. Be curious, because this is one of the things that I'm seeing now with the youth. They're not curious enough. Go outside of the technology, talk to people. Knowledge, not only on the on Google or other media, social media forms you can use. Talk to people, knowledge, because each person, each adult, let's say each adult is a library. So do your research, try to understand who you are, try to understand your entourage, the environment, and you will learn so many things, and you will be able to be a good leader or a good servant for your community.
Anybody else want to respond to that question?
I think too, you have to be true to yourself, and you have to stay, as a young person, you have to stay focused, because there's so many distractions out there. And there's so many people saying that you cannot, you cannot, you cannot, you can't do this, you can't do this, because this is where you are, this is where you come from, so you can't do and you can't achieve. But I think if you stay focused and you know what you want, and you surround yourself with people who are like-minded, people who think and are focused on where they want to go and know where they want to go, and that goes a long way, and develop and have a strong respect for yourself. And because once you respect yourself, you respect other people, and be open and open to advice and suggestions, because young people, like, they think they know everything, but sometimes it's hard to tell them they don't. But if you stay focused and you stay true to yourself, then you will go where you want to go.
Can I add to this, Thora?
Definitely. I find that what you're saying, they're very, very important advice to young people. So go ahead, Karine.
Thank you, Thora. I would add to this, I worked with youth at risk for over 10 years and before being appointed, but being on the bench when a young person, most of the young people that comes before me are in really, really bad trouble. I always tell them that there's no one that can keep them from being what they want to be. And there's no situation in life that can keep you away from what you really want to be. And I tell them, it's not the Crown, it's not the Defense Counsel, it's not the clerk, it's not myself, it's not the social worker, it's not them that's going to make it what they want to be in life. So they need to love themselves and to never give up. That's what I tell them. I tell them to just be the best version that they can be, always.
I find that those advice are very, very good. Each adult is a library. I think we should all take that into mind, because that is where we learn. I think at this stage, really there's so much to learn. There is so much that each one of you can add, but we don't have the time. So I think at this time, I'm just going to switch positions and somebody else can take over.
So I have two questions for you. And I hope that we will be able to go through them with all your knowledge and guidance. So if a husband decides to sell the property he bought, is the wife entitled to share in the sale of the matrimonial home that is registered to his name, in his name?
Well, it depends. I find that people seem not to know their rights. What happens when people separate? There's a division of the assets that they brought into the marriage. However, the law makes a distinction with the matrimonial home. If you brought in, say, $50,000 and you put it in the matrimonial home, and you live in that home until you separate or divorce, you have lost that $50,000. However, if you sold that house halfway through the marriage, then at the end of the marriage, the only money that is shared is the difference between the increase on the $50,000 to the end of the marriage. So you don't lose everything. And that is why it's important that people know what their rights are and at least seek out those rights as soon as they can. because what I do find now that a lot of people are very, very angry when they purchase a house 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and all of a sudden they realize that the house is worth $1 million. And that other lady is now, that other man is now going to get 50%. So I think that it's important that people understand what their rights are.
Mhm. So what happens if the wife waits a long time after the separation to make a claim for division of assets?
What happens here is there are things called limitation periods. In family law, they have a limitation period after divorce, and there's a limitation period after separation. If you want assets to be divided after your divorce, so you go to court, you get your divorce, everything is final. You have 2 years in which to make that claim. If you don't make that claim, you might lose it. There might be circumstances depending on the particular what has happened, where the court might waive that limitation period. But it's not very often that they do that. The second limitation period is after you separate. So if you separate, you have to make that claim within 6 years. Again, if you don't make that claim within 6 years, you might lose your entitlement. And you have to think that, you know, especially in a long marriage, there may be a lot of things that you're losing, pensions, property, and all these assets. So it's important that people know exactly what their rights are and when to at least make those applications.
Thora, can I ask a quick question? Can people, or do you find in your experience as a family lawyer, do you find individuals who try or attempt to hide assets and hide cash? And how is that resolved?
Oh, that happens every day. So what happens is we have something in law that's called the tracing. So if you can say that you know that this person had so much money, then you can trace it through the bank. There's another thing that we do. We have a financial statement. Everything is on the financial statement. And we look into, when somebody comes in and they say, oh, I have nothing. They can't pay child support or they can't do whatever. We look at their accounts and see how much money they've been spending. You can't spend $20 if you only make $3. So we look at all the expenses and we try to look back and see. You can go back as far as you want to find out if that person is hiding assets. The court is very, very upset when they find out that people hide assets. So even if you got married, you got a divorce and you got whatever you thought your share would be, and 10 years down the line, you find out that that person was hiding assets, you can go back and the court will just hammer that person for doing that. And you know, there's certain people who make sure that they know what their other spouse has. And there are those other people who just live independently. And especially with Black women. Black women are very, very independent. They know what they have and they might not know what the other person has. So then when it comes to separation, you ask them, you know if your husband have a pension? Oh, I really don't know. There are people who do not know even where what type of job their husbands do, but they have been married for years. He gets up and he goes to work every day. You don't know whether they have a pension. So the more you know, the easier it will be for you when there's a separation.
Okay.
Any other?
I think that's all we have for you, Thora.
Yeah, this was very, very interesting. As you probably know, my area is with children. So Darlene, we have so much in common. You talked about the Youth and Family Service Act. I was part of that legislation. The problem with that legislation is because all the Native people were involved, but there was not sufficient people in the Black community who was putting their position forward. They did look at the submissions that were made by the Black community, but for some reason, only part of it got, very, very little got incorporated in the law. So what I have to do every day is sort of fight for the issues that you're fighting for. So I think that we have come to the end. I must thank everybody, all the people who were involved in the planning. We go back to Miss Joan Simmons and all the other people who were involved in this presentation. It looks very, very nice outside. So I'm really grateful that you all took this time off to be here today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment. It's your time.